You made it.
Hey, can you see me? All right, I can't see me.
Yes, I see you.
Okay. Well, that's good. Happy Friday. Yay. So, Jasmine, where are you?
I'm in Iceland, underwater.
That is cool.
I'm trying to get something that feels cool.
Yes. Is it hot there?
Well, today's not bad. This week hasn't been bad, but it's been pretty humid. You know what that's like.
I do. I do not miss that at all.
Well, I am glad to see that you're wearing a trooper's hat because I was going to ask you if you could give us some trooper stories and tell us about the most recent events because I've been enjoying your pictures.
Okay, perfect. Because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a show and tell. And Barb can't be with us. She's having some car difficulties and crisis, but she wants, the recording. So hopefully, and Molly too probably would like to see the recording. So we'll start off with, this is my trooper's hat. It does have the characteristic logo, the cross sabers. I have my original cross sabers. I meant to bring it down here. It's on my original trooper jacket. So maybe next time I'll bring my original trooper jacket and my original cross sabers. These are larger than the originals, and these are plastic. My originals are metal, and they're smaller, and they're one of my most prized possessions. The other thing is I've got my shirt on. So this is my Drumline shirt for the Troopers Legacy Corps. And we all had, the Drumline had red. The, I can't remember if the horns were blue or yellow, and the color guard was either blue or yellow. And those were our bus colors. So back when we were trooper kids, we had 3 buses. We had a red bus, a blue bus, and a yellow bus. And quite honestly, I can't remember the drummers, which bus we had, but I remember very distinctly at times pushing our bus, one of which was up I-70 right before what is now the Eisenhower Tunnel. It used to be just a different tunnel. It wasn't named or anything fancy like it is now, but we were pushing it, and it used to break down all the time. They were sort of like old trailways, I think, buses that had been probably were in a junkyard, and they were purchased in the 50s, I believe, or 60s. Anyway, a lot of, and we weren't allowed to use the bathrooms. I remember that on the bus, because we were on the bus for a whole summer. And so not even in emergencies. So I have some stories about that, but anyway, the smell of diesel fuel is very characteristic. So I'm going to keep my hat on for the whole time. And the way that it's worn is very, very tight over the eyebrows. So, you don't want to have it like that because you look, but there's a way that the hat is worn. So it's right above on the eyebrow line. So the next thing I'll show you is just, a flag. This was from the fundraiser. They had these on the tables. And at the end, I helped myself to a flag. Of course, you have to have your troopers lanyard that you can put on your neck with your name tag or whatever. So got one of those. This year we got to keep our troopers scarf and scarf ring. And a lot of the trooper kids wear the scarf ring around their neck on a chain. So if they marched 5 years, they'll have 5 of these or whatever. It's very big in marching band in high school and in drum corps to have some kind of a memento that you have around your neck. So I noticed some people wearing little nuts, not a nut that you eat, but like a nut from Home Depot. And there were smaller ones and larger ones, depending on what horn they played, because you have to be nuts to play that particular instrument because it's so heavy. But anyway, this is a scarf ring. I do have my original scarf, which I used to have hanging on the wall, but I will pull it out. But this is my new scarf and my new scarf ring. I don't know that I ever had an old scarf ring. I can't remember what we did, if we had a scarf ring or if we tied it. But anyway, they were making these up until the last minute. And in my slideshow, I'll actually show you they were making these, but this is very special and it's going to be on my wall. This year, we also got to keep our belt and belt buckle, which is huge because we usually don't get to keep the belts, but because this year might be the last, you know, the uniforms, we have to buy our own, what's called bibbers. They're the black pants that kind of look like overalls that are under your uniform. We had to buy our uniform shirt. I did not bring home the drum. I had an opportunity to buy the rope drum, and I just had a hard time committing to something that I hadn't seen or played. And it was a beautiful drum. There were 5 of them made just for us, and they've all been claimed. A couple of the contemporary snare people bought them, and one of my fellow rope drummers bought them, and then we collectively bought them, one for our section leader who marched right next to me. And he was not only section leader for our section, but the entire drum line of 41 people. And so we all bought him his drum, which is really cool. But I just thought, you know, do I really need another drum that, you know, you've seen the studio. So I was like, it's going to be a really expensive decoration and it would have been really cool. But if I ever want to get one of those drums, I can have one made. And the logo was really cool and all of that. I did, however, come home with a drum head that will be hanging on my wall. So this is DCI World Championships, of course, made by Remo. And some people were having people sign them and things like that. But I just want this and I'll just hang it on my wall. I'll have like a little display of like old trooper memorabilia and more new trooper memorabilia. I also did get, let's see if I can get it, a trooper ring. I don't even wear jewelry other than my necklace that I always have on with some medals and things like that. This is, I plan to wear this, and I never wore my high school ring. I never got any rings. I don't really wear rings or bracelets that often. So, but this one, I feel like I earned this puppy. So I'm wearing it. And on the side, and I have a picture of it in my slideshow, on the side, it's got my name, Karen Drums, and on the other side it has honor, loyalty and dedication, which is our logo, HLD. Inside I had it engraved with 4 years that I marched, 1982 when I was a kid trooper, 20 years later in 2002 in Atlanta Corvettes, I marched what's called Senior Drum Corps. Now they're calling it All Age Drum Corps, because senior, you know, makes it sound like you're old, and old means 22, 23 and up. So they're calling it kind of like now all age. And so I marched tenors in 1982 and I marched tenors in 2002. That's the 5 drums, also known as quints. And interestingly enough, the kids now call them quads, even though there's more than 4. So quads means 4 drums, quints means 5s. And also like my set has, I can turn it into 6 drums, which is a 6-pack, but they call them all quads, which is funny. If there's 6 drums, they call it quads. I still call it quints because that's what we called it. And so I marched 82 and 2002, and then 20 years after that, which was last year, 2022, also marched tenors with the Troopers Legacy Corps, but we were not doing drill. We weren't moving around. We just stayed stationary, so I was able to march tenors. This year, I knew they were marching drill, and I wasn't going to be able to march carrying 5 drums, so that's why I converted over to traditional grip, which I quite honestly in the beginning didn't think was going to happen. The first day I did it, I was like, this is just not going to happen. You know, I've been playing over 50 years, match grip, which is where your hands are matched, and then to turn your hand over. So the motion is this motion, not this motion. And it's a big difference. And I just remember standing there the first day, just doing single strokes, thinking, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I, did it every day. And it got to the point where even at the end, the last 6 weeks or 2 months, I stopped playing my drum set. I stopped playing match grip. I still haven't this week gone back to matched. And I'm going to keep this up because there's going to be opportunities, or possibly if there are opportunities, I know now that I can do this, and was playing well. And it felt normal, and then there's a part in the tune or in the show where at the very end, where we flipped our stick over and had these big motions, and I was playing match grip, and it felt so unusual. So anyway, I'm going to keep them both going, and I might even try doing some jazz drumming with traditional, because I think that would be another, I haven't done it that way. So it might be it's never too late to modify and start and keep growing. So that's pretty exciting. So I do have my trooper jacket here, and this is a relatively new one I've only had for a few years. So it says Troopers. This was an alumni jacket, the long blue line. Hopefully you can see it. And I went and professionally had my patches attached, which costed more than my jacket. But anyway, they look nice. So I pulled them off my original jacket. So this was Montreal. We marched in the Olympic Stadium after, this was in 1982. This was the World Championship. And they had just built that stadium in 76 for the Olympics and it was a big cement thing and sound bounced around. But anyway, this patch is from 82. That's why I have Canada on here. I marched the tenor line. And then Corvettes 20 years later, that was out of Atlanta, 2002. That's their logo, Corvettes. And we marched in what's called DCA. So DCI is like the kids, and DCA is the Senior Corps World Championship. So that was in Scranton, Pennsylvania back in 2002. On the other sleeve, I got the Troopers Legacy Corps patch. I got the 2022 Legacy Corps member patch. So this is, 82, 2002, 2022, 20 years apart. And then this year, here's this year's patch. This is the World Championship. It looks like the drum head. And then I actually have over here, this year's member patch that will go later today and get put on the jacket for another $15. So anyway, but it was just so nice to wear our trooper jacket, and everybody knew what we were, and we all had them, because most of the time people are like, what's that? Are you a cop or something? They don't know. So it's just nice to like the trooper logo. There's a point in the show where we actually do with our sticks for 8 counts. We're up doing with our sticks, the trooper logo. And anyway, this logo is very important to all of us, as is Battle Hymn. We all cry. Those are the two things that you need to know about a trooper, is that we all cry at Battle Hymn. And I mean, just all of us instantly. And then the logo, it's everywhere. We got it everywhere. So also if I'm going to go to all this effort, I'm going to get stuff. So I didn't buy this, but we were given this medal, which is really cool. And it says Legacy Corps Troopers 65th anniversary, DCI finals. And then the picture, which is cool. And it's, we set up for this picture. It's perfect. We set up for it in about a minute and a half. That's the thing about being in drum corps. It's very efficient. And the problem with the picture, the only problem is over here, you can see the rope drums, and there's 2 players. There were 4 of us. They split us, 2 here and 2 here. Well, I'm over here, and our drums were on, but they were, and this is in my slideshow show, so I'll point it out, but you can't see our drums, which is so sad. You can see the tenor drums. These are the ones I played last year. You can see the snare drums and the bass drums, but the cymbal players, you can see their cymbals a little bit, but our rope drums are hidden, the 2 of us over there. So that was kind of sad, but I did purchase the picture with the four of us in our section with our uniforms on. So I will have that later on. We'll do maybe a Troopers Part 2, where I'll show my original trooper jacket and cross sabers and scarf, and actually some mallets that I still have. And then that new picture. So I think what I'm going to do is share my screen, and feel free to jump in and ask questions, because I'll just.
Well, I've got one right off the bat, is why are you guys called the Troopers, since you're mistaken for the state troopers all the time?
Yeah, so the troopers, let's see, hopefully, let me make sure. Can you see the big slide, or are you seeing something else? You're seeing the big slide? Okay. So the troopers in 1957, Jim Jones, who was a general contractor out of Casper, Wyoming, started the troopers, and he wanted it to be something where kids could have something to do, and a lot of the drum corps, the original drum corps, were started this way. They were either in inner city places or rural places, and it was almost like the Boys and Girls Club, something for kids to do. A lot of times, some of the early troopers, I've come to find out and didn't really realize that, but there was somebody in our section who this was their situation. They didn't even read music because they just learned by rote. So a lot of times kids would show up and they would just practice constantly on their instrument. And it was a way for kids to have an activity that was like a sport almost, that you could be a part of, that you could participate, and then possibly start to compete. And Jim Jones, because we were from Wyoming, it was a Western theme, and basically our outfits and everything are modeled after the 11th Ohio Cavalry. So you've probably seen old cowboy movies or whatever, where you have seen this type of an outfit. The thing that I really like about the troopers is they maintain their identity. So even this year, they don't have the Boy Scout looking uniforms like we have. These are original style, but they actually have still the Western theme. And this year's show was all about lassoing the sun. And they have an amazing prop that looks like the sun. They had a harmonica player, which was interesting because usually harmonica is not in drum corps. Last year they had a cello player, and the theme had to do with oil. And so they try to maintain something that's Western or Wyoming-ish. And a lot of kids are not from Wyoming anymore. They have to draw from all over. In fact, they're pretty much getting most of their kids from Texas, because Texas is a big state. It's got strong music program, and they, in fact, they contract with these kids. And it's interesting this year to hear stories of it. Used to be kids would play with the troopers when they're 18, 19, 20. And their last year, they would age out with maybe Blue Devils or Cavaliers or Phantom Regiment or one of the top 5. Now kids are leaving those groups to want to age out with the troopers, which is just, it just makes me so happy, because troopers would lose kids because they're drawing from a different area. I mean, we're not in California where we have millions of colleges that you can draw from. And so I'm happy to see that troopers maintain their identity. A lot of other groups, in my opinion, they'll come out with new uniforms every year and a different theme. Maybe one year they're jazz and the next year they're totally something else. You don't even know who they are. And I guess that's okay, but I really like that troopers have maintained their identity, but they've also modernized things. So they've upgraded, and they're not just using the same old uniform and the same old, but the theme and the music tends to be similar, Magnificent Seven, Silverado, How the West Was Won, all those kind of that genre. And so anyway, here's a picture of us that you can see hopefully better, and I'll kind of point out here, I am right here. And here's my new best buddy, Bill. He and I marched next to each other. Bill marched in the early 70s. So we have a very similar style. And immediately when we met and started playing, he came in for a camp here in Denver about 2 months ago. We got together. All of us actually got together here in Denver, the rope line, the 4 of us. The rope drums are very traditional, and none of us had really, Bill had played rope drum before, but I'd never played a rope drum. I've played contemporary snare and tenors, all the way through college. I was center snare. But we didn't march. We marched match grip because we were all from that era where our teachers were kind of saying that, traditional was out and it's only for jazz players, and, we were, rock and roll was in and match grip was how it was going to be. And even in marching, a lot of high schools played match grip. So did colleges. Some of them maintained traditional, and in drum corps, now most all the snare lines, the contemporary snare, are traditional grip. So that's why I play tenors. And for me, I think tenors are more complicated because you got 5 drums and you're playing similar kinds of passages that the contemporary snares are playing, but you have to put it, you're all over the place. And I found it very challenging and fun, but they are extremely heavy. But anyway, Bill and I just clicked immediately when we played together. It was like, oh, this is going to be an awesome season. And then over here are the other 2 rope players. One was like I said, our section leader. His name is Todd. He wrote all of the percussion music for all the entire drum line. And I loved his writing style. And he did a lot of writing between the contemporary snares and the rope snares, where we would augment places because the contemporary snares are very tight and high pitched. And we were very low and meaty. And we were joking kind of like, because it would be like the contemporary snares sounded kind of like a chihuahua, yap, 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 yap. And then we'd come in, woo, woo, woo. And so we kind of had the bottom end. But there were a lot of places where we augmented either what they were playing or similar to what they were playing, or we would go back and forth. They would play and then we would play. And so it was just really fun. And at the very end, it was cool because we were intermixed with the contemporary snares. And so I had, 2 of the best players on either side of me. And it was just so fun to be right on the 50 marching down the center and in Lucas Oil Stadium, which was just this enormous, really cool stadium that was just so impressive. So let's see, I'm just going to start to go through. So hopefully that answered the question of why they're troopers. It's the 11th Ohio Cavalry. And okay.
What are those 3 guys on the left who are in blue, the dark blue? What do they do that's different from the rest of the crowd?
Oh, these 3. Yes, these are our drum majors. And so they're the ones who are conducting for us. Sometimes there'd be one in the middle and one on the side or one in the back, or they would take turns, but those are our drum majors. And then also, interestingly enough, along the sides here, this is what's called the honor guard. And when I send you the video, or maybe you've seen it already, they carry the various flags from the various really special events that the troopers won. And also they're wearing characteristic costumes or uniforms from that era. So it's kind of neat. They're not all wearing, they're wearing like something from the 70s, something from the 80s, something from the 90s. And so that was really cool. They're called the Honor Guard, and they march in with all the flags. But the rest of us are either horns or drumline or color guard. So the color guard kind of have these white uniforms. They either throw rifles or have flags. The drumline, we had contemporary snares, rope snares, tenors, basses, cymbals, and then the front ensemble. Those are the ones that don't march. They play all the marimba, timpani, chimes, those kinds of things. And then as far as the horns, they have various sizes of horn, going from the soprano, which are the screechers. They've got something called a mellophone, something called a baritone, something called a contra, the big like tuba style instrument. And so they have all the various voices represented. And that's kind of in most drum corps. We march 215 people, which is a lot of people. Most drum corps, the kids, I think it's something like, I have to look it up, but it's like 128, 136, I don't know, somewhere in there, but not 215 for sure. So we just, had this incredible sound, even in that big stadium. I mean, it was, the people were going nuts. Especially a lot of these folks are trooper fans. They've seen troopers over the years. They knew what our characteristic moves were, the songs. It was very, very, honoring the troopers. And so, you know, that's our name, Troopers Legacy Corps. We started out as an alumni corps where everybody was an alumni of the troopers. And then about a year ago or so, they decided to open it up to anybody who's marched corps or who pretty much could handle it. And so we have people who marched against us. We have people competed against us. We have people that never marched corps, but always wanted to, but are in music. You know, a lot of these people are band directors. A lot of them teach private lessons. A lot of these folks, you know, music's very important to pretty much everybody in this group. There's nobody who's just random off the street, you know, oh, I think I'll do this. Or if so, they're on, you know, I don't want to call out a particular instrument or anything like that, but they're on an instrument where you could kind of be able to do that, but still with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And, you know, we made it really, really inclusive that you are now a trooper. You're not like, you know, even if you've never marched troopers, and this is kind of the alumni corps, it's really the legacy corps. So you don't have to be a previous alum, but that you are now a trooper. So we made it really clear that if you're in this group, you're a trooper, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. So the next picture here, let's see, was just, you know, as soon as I hit the airport. Welcome to Indy. Indianapolis is a great place for marching band competitions, drum corps competitions. It's in the middle of the United States. They have the facility. They even have a lot of musical stuff. They've got I think I mentioned before, when I went to a PASIC there, they had a rhythm and percussion museum where Krupa's drums are, and they've been very welcoming to the musical community. And their stadium is, you know, it's covered, so you have climate control. You don't have to worry about getting rained on and that kind of thing. You know, places like Atlanta have the dome, sound bounces around in there. You can hear the concessions. So Indy, it actually has pretty good musical sound in a stadium. They've got AstroTurf. They have tunnels that actually go from the conference center. So you could march inside if it were raining outside and you had, you know, 15 or 25 groups that had to all warm up and be somewhere. They have a lot of space, and it's indoor space. It's climate controlled. And so it's just been a very perfect place. And I think from now on, all DCI events the big one, the finals, will be held in Indianapolis. So, you know, good job, Indy, for, you know, having a home for drum corps. So check-in, as you might imagine, was kind of crazy because a lot of these folks didn't have parts to their uniform. So they had to show up with their own black marching shoes and bibbers, but then you would get your uniform top, your hat, your tassel, your belt, your scarf, all this kind of stuff. And so this is my buddy Bill. Bill, you know, was so pleasant, always happy. You know, in fact, there was a kind of like an award ceremony, and the Todd, our section leader, described him as a golden retriever, you know, because he was just always like, yay. In fact, that became our rope drum little thing that we would always do, is yay, you know. And so there's him with his bag of goodies at check-in. So that was fun. And then this lady here, Carlene, she was just she was in the original troopers. She, I think at one time, was from Wyoming. She lives in Ohio now. And just like the epitomizes the spirit of the troopers. And so it was really a pleasure to get to know her a little bit better. And you know, she was out there sweating like the rest of us. She was a trooper. So all of us, you know, had very long days, very hot days, you know. Apply sunscreen, then basically, you know, you sweat it off, apply sunscreen all day long. And it was just the most wonderful exhaustion at the end of the day. You were exhausted, but in the happiest, best way possible. So here's our drums. So they were this is when we first got to see them. So they were on this eagle blanket, you know, and here's the little, they were made by a man named Dave Loyal Drums. He makes rope drums. They have a very special head, very special Nothing's metal really. There's a little bit of metal on it, but the contemporary snares have metal rims, metal, hoops. This was all not really wood. You could do a rim shot on it. It was, I forgot the name of the material. We didn't do a lot of rim shots. We didn't want to beat it up. And, here's the little logo for Dave Loyal. Here's our logo. The Trooper logo was placed on here, and there were 5 of these, and 4 of us played them, and then one of them didn't get played, but got sold for sure. And they were lighter than you would expect. The problem, however, is they bang your knee. And I had come prepared with knee pads because I knew it was going to whack me in the kneecap every single time I moved. And they were very hard to play because you were chasing them, because they were all over the place. And there were times in the show where I just had to grab it and kind of run, because if you tried to march with it, it would bounce and swing all over, and you couldn't play at the same time at times. So it was a little challenging. And I thought about, tying it to my leg and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, we made it happen. In fact, I gave my second knee pad, my right knee pad, to my buddy Bill, so he wouldn't get his left knee banged up. So we both had left knee pads on to protect our knee, not because we needed it for our ligaments or anything like that. So here's our rope line. We've got our trooper faces on, we're not supposed to really be smiling or anything like that. So here's us the first time we put it on, and here's Todd. He's counting us off, getting ready to do a warm up. We actually, during this warm up, all of a sudden we noticed this drone was right above us. I'll have to get that footage of that drone, but it was like this bug that was this giant bug that was right in front of us during when we were doing this. And it was just like, what is that? Oh, it's a drone. And the guy behind us was one of the snare drummers, and he was capturing some video, which was kind of cool.
How much do these rope drums weigh?
I didn't actually weigh it, and I did know it one time because they told us before, but surprisingly not that much. Definitely less than a contemporary snare, and a lot lighter. The very first thing I did was pick it up, and it was surprisingly light. And it does cut in because you're wearing it on a sling. It does cut in on your right shoulder. You can see the strap here. But because of the wood, I believe it was ash, I want to say. It was either one of 2 types of wood. I think it was ash, but it was very light. And I was surprised by that. And the head I thought was going to be very loose. So the way you control the tension on the head is by sliding this little black thing down and on each of these, and it tightens the head. The head was very modern. It wasn't like a calfskin head like the original kinds of rope drums would have, like an animal skin type thing on it, and it would be really muddy to play. This one was very articulate, and it was very exposed, so which I liked, and so you could hear every little note, and there was no hiding in a mushy drum, and they felt good. They just but they were hard to control. They bounce around and move around, and we tried all the different maneuvers that they told us, where to put the strap and everything, but they're not meant to be, today's drum corps is moving around the field quite quickly, and these are meant for more parades and that kind of thing. And they do actually make a strap that you can put it around your left leg so that it kind of follows your leg. And I actually brought all kinds of devices that I was gonna jimmy rig to my leg, and we tried a bunch of it, and then we just decided, we would take smaller steps when we could. And when we had to take big steps, we were going to grab it and go with it, because plus it just looked sloppy when it was bouncing all over and swinging from side to side. So we just kind of held it with our left hand a lot of times when we were marching. And then we would try not to march when we were playing, which we had to alter the drill a little to be able to do that. But they're pretty light. Surprisingly, they look heavy, but they really weren't. And that was a refreshing thing, because that was my concern. Heavy, and it's at a slant, and how is it going to be to play? We got used to it. But it's still definitely better to have a front carrier that doesn't move, especially when you're playing hard music. It's you don't want to be trying to chase your drum. There was one point in the show at Lucas Stadium, this was in the practice, where the drum literally went almost all the way behind me, and I was still trying to play it. And it was just like, it's impossible. So yeah, it was challenging. So actually at the beginning of the show, when we marched out, I didn't play that passage because if we did, we had one drill performance and 2 standstills. So I played it during the standstills. So I felt like I got to play that passage, but twice. But during the actual opening, we were in the back, and I was like, you know what? It's just not worth having the drum look bad and have it sound terrible if I'm chasing it. So I'm just gonna grab it and go. And because I'm also shorter, and my steps are, I had to take bigger steps than everybody else, and so then that made the drum bounce more. And so anyway, here's the cymbal line. And a few of these people were fairly new to drum corps. This young lady I found out was 15 years old, and I think she was there with like her mom. And so, wow, to jump in and to do this is ambitious. So our cymbal line was really cool. I got to, hang out with them and really get to know them, and all super nice folks. And they did a lot of really cool visuals and everything. So that is our cymbal line. So here's the rope snares. Here's the contemporary snares. Some of them have little things over their drum here, but they take them off for the show. They're just like protection types of things. Here's the tenor line, and then the bass drums were back here. So you can kind of see this was pretty much the whole drum line at our very first practice. Here's the front ensemble. So these are the marimba, the vibes, chimes, timpani, tambourine, those kinds of things. So here were they practicing. They had this little eagle, which was their little mascot, which was cool. Here's our friend Carlene here. She played cymbals. And then here's our timpanist. So we actually had a gong. You can see all these really cool instruments. So those are what's called the front ensemble. Here's the bass drums getting put out. These drums were all played by the Trooper kids several years ago. And now they belong or we borrow them for the Troopers Legacy Corps. So these were the tenors that I played last year, and beautiful drums made by Pearl. Here they were making scarves up until the last minute. So they actually had a sewing machine, and there were people who were volunteers that they have several sewing machines where they were, putting the finishing touches on the scarves. This drum was made by one of the guys in the rope line. He made 2 of these drums. You'll notice it does have metal on it. It is still considered a rope drum, but he actually made this drum, and he made 2 of them. And this actual painting was painted by an artist, and who did a fantastic job. This drum actually cost twice as much as our drums. He had to buy every little piece, and some of these parts are kind of rare and unusual, but it was a project that he took on, and he created 2 of these, and I believe he is going to be selling them or auctioning them off at some point. But they were beautiful, and I just wanted to try it on. And so this was one of, kind of a rope drum, but not completely rope. It still had the tension rods. So it's kind of a hybrid in between. It looks like a rope drum. It's worn like a rope drum, but it actually, is different because it's kind of got some metal components. Here's the original rope drums that the Troopers played. And you notice the uniforms were very similar to what we wear. And you can see the rope hanging down here. And usually they have an emblem of very similar to the one we just saw a minute ago. And so it was really cool to it's very historical. Not every corps marches rope drum. This was very much pulled out for the 65th anniversary to honor the Troopers. Very appropriate to have rope drums. So I feel really honored to have gotten to play that instrument. So a lot of guys and gals have, when they were either in Troopers or are now getting tattoos. And so these were just a couple of them. This gentleman, his nickname is Superman, and here was his tattoo. I believe he also marched with Madison Scouts and has other tattoos and such. But anyway, that was just neat to see, people that had Troopers tattoos. And I know some people this year, after they got back, got Troopers tattoos. It's one of those unique experiences in life where a bunch of, strangers get together and end up becoming like bonded in their soul, is the best way that I can put it. It's just, in PA school, we called it trauma bonding, because you go through this highs and lows, and it was just a special thing where it's a lot like that, where you go through a lot of stuff together, and you just get bonded and feel bonded, even if you don't know everybody's name or get to talk to them, or you pretty much only get to know the people kind of in your section. You wave and kind of know people, but you don't really ever have time to talk to them because you're just rehearsing all the time. So this was my first day, or one of the first days. It wasn't my first day. I think it was like the third day, but I'm looking fresh here. I should have taken an after, because I certainly didn't look like this. After, I would have been very sweaty, and my hair was all going all different directions, and starting to get like exhaustion looking. And but anyway, I had my full water container, and I had my trooper's jacket, which I didn't show you the front. I've got my name, Karen Quince, 1982, and on the other side it's got, of course, the trooper logo. You can kind of see that on the picture. And so here I am with my rope drum and my glasses and my hat and my drill shirt, so that we, the drummers were red. But this was the day we were going into the stadium. We only had one time to be on that field in the stadium, so we needed to, be able to see yellow and blue and red and correct it quickly. We weren't in there long, so everybody was wearing their characteristic. The color guard is yellow and the horn line was blue. So this is all of us. We got dropped off with buses standing out in front of the Lucas Oil Stadium. If you've never been there, it's massive. When you walk into that stadium, it's like the sound just like, it's like a vacuum, the sound just gets sucked up, and it's just huge and just very intimidating, but so incredibly cool, especially when it's filled with drum corps fans, giving you standing ovations. Here was all of us again, just kind of getting ready to go in there. And here's Bill. He's got his practice pad here, warming up outside. He's kind of got his traditional grip there, which is the way he plays. This is Savannah. She was one of our drum majors, and she was a trooper drum major just a few years ago and aged out. She's very short, but she can pack a punch. She's like a firecracker. And there's a part in the show where the rope drummers, it's very exposed, and it's just us, and it's like a little, not very complicated, but a little solo that's very militaristic. And she just got us going, and all of us were just like looking at her, like basically burning a hole in her soul, watching her so that we would be perfectly exact. Because there was only 4 of us playing, and it had to be perfect. And it turned out great. But she, at one point, she started us off, and then she just closed her eyes. She was probably praying, but anyway, we played great, and it wasn't a hard piece, but it was just so exposed. And in a big stadium, a lot can happen. You can get off just a little bit or what have you, or marching backwards, you could trip and fall, whatever. But it turned out great. But anyway, you just got to trust your drum major, because sometimes what you hear with your ears, especially when we were playing indoors, they'd be over there doing their thing, and you want to go with what you're listening to. But because of where it's called phasing, where you're far away from the other people, sometimes if you try to be with them, you're really not with them. And sometimes if you're not with them, you're really with them. So it's very elusive. So you pretty much have to really rely on what they're doing. And no matter what you're hearing, focus and play what they're beating out. And everybody needs to do that, and the sound will be good. But when it's inside and it's bouncing around, it can be really, really challenging. So this is our little mascot. His name is Trigger, and this is his owner. And actually, Trigger sits right next to his owner when he's playing on the field, and it's just really cool. Back when I was a trooper, we had a dog that marched with us. I should pull out my trooper pictures. Maybe we're definitely going to have a part 2, because we're already running out of time. But I'll pull out my pictures and show you. Our dog's name was Shep. He was a German Shepherd, and he would just sit on the end of the field. His owner was helped with logistics. I think he might have been a bus driver too, but Back then, people had multiple jobs. We didn't have a big food truck, and we just pulled into a mall, and ate fast food. But now they have food trucks, so they have a whole food crew that feeds kids the entire tour. It's a major production to go on the road, but it's cool to have a dog. And when the dog was on the big screen, you hear the audience like, oh, and if you watch the video, it sounds like we're getting booed, but they're saying troop. And so anyway, you'll notice that when you see the video, but the dog got a lot of applause, more than we did. So here's the stadium, it's just super impressive. Pictures don't do it justice. So this is us walking in, and it was just one of those things, you just walk in and you're like in awe. And, it was just an amazing feeling to walk in there. And, it's a big stadium, and in drum corps, you only fill the front half. You don't have people watching your backside, but there's a lot of people in here. And, it didn't look like it, but there was, because it's just a huge stadium. And so here's us, here's the tenors getting set up. We always try to be in drum corps. We always try to be very orderly. We never just throw our drums all over the place. When you leave your drums, they're always, same with horns, they're lined up, and they're in some kind of order. And there's a lot of etiquette to drum corps. And so this is one of the things when you go into a place and you set up, it should look like this. It shouldn't just be willy-nilly all over the place. So that, I just thought it was a really cool picture with the hat on top. And so again, here, wherever you're putting your drums down, it's in some kind of orderly fashion. Here's my buddy Bill and I. Here's Michael Jed, who was also marched in the 70s in troopers. The cool thing about the rope line, all of us did march troopers at one time. We had the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s represented. So that was really cool. And so this was us. And here we are. This is one of my favorite pictures. And here's our drums. And here's us again. They gave us time to kind of, enjoy in the stadium, because when you actually do the show and you have uniforms on, there's just no time. You get in, you get out. Even the cymbal players have to, there's a point in the show, if you watch the video, where a gentleman named Big Al is playing 30-inch cymbals. They were specially made, and he has to lean way back and crash them. And then the trooper kids were in front, cheering every time he would hit the cymbal crash. Each one of these cymbals, he said, weighs 30 pounds. So they're 30 inches in diameter and 30 pounds a piece. And he's an older guy, and he's able to crash those things. And that's very characteristics of the troopers, which was really cool. Here's just me again at the rehearsal. Look, you can see how tiny I am compared to that stadium. And then this was just a couple of the guys, Michael Jed in the rope line, and this gentleman's name is Gary. He's from Canada. He marched in the contemporary snare line. We went to a fundraiser, and yes, even the watermelon has the logo. I just thought that was just so appropriate and cool. And then it was really a neat thing that they had a bunch of pictures in order, all the different eras. And so you could find yourself. And so here's Bill pointing himself out. And back then, he actually marched a year where they had 2 rope drums, and they have them on a special. Notice they're not at a slant. Looks like they're marching matched grip. And, they've got the eagle, I believe it is, but 2 rope drums, and they're on a special stand. They're not slanted. They're not on a sling. They're marching match grip. So that was cool. He's pointing himself out. I think this is him right here. So that was cool. He found himself. And then I think he's one of these guys. I think he's one of these 2 here, or maybe he's this one. But anyway, he found himself. And this one is more of it's got the traditional slant. It looks like it might be the same drum. So that was kind of cool. Then I found me. I was marching tenors. I put this little, I didn't mark it on the actual photo. I marked it on the PowerPoint, but here's my tenors, my quints back then. And then I found myself again here. And in fact, they had a quilt for the 65th anniversary, and that picture made it on the quilt, which was kind of cool. It's this picture here, which was kind of neat. Let's see, we have a couple more minutes. We might make it through this, and then we'll have a part 2 where we do some other stuff. Oh, here's the picture of of the troopers, and then a close up. You can see actually our quints are a different configuration than they're marching now. Here's me right here. Here's my good buddy, Kerry Kalasny. We're still friends and we stay in touch with one another. This is a gentleman named Dugan, and we called him Doogie. And so I'm Facebook friends with him. He's in Arizona. And I bet I could find these two guys if I needed to. But anyway, this was our quint line. And I still have these mallets actually that I'm, they're falling apart, but I still do have them. And so here, look how high we marched. Our drums are up almost to our eyeballs. Nowadays, they march a much lower. And this doesn't give you a lot of room with your arm. And but this was where we marched them, and our drums were yellow, and they were, you can see the uniform is very similar. And then here was my out in front of my house. I got to go home and sleep in my own bed one night when we were on the road, as long as I could be back by the highway where they were picking us up. And so anyway, that was and this was a show. I can barely see this. We all had mustaches. I'm not sure what we were doing. It was just a silly thing we did. So anyway, there's me with a mustache. And then here's the troopers cakes for the 65th anniversary, HLD. Here's everything was trooper. So I found this jacket of a lady who was wearing this. It was she told me the lady who made it in town. I thought mine was the only one because I wanted a trooper jacket. And they said, well, there's a lady in town who makes them. And I got my jacket. This is my jacket. I pulled my patches off, as I just showed you a minute ago, but I was like, oh, mine's not the only one. And clearly this is the same lady. So I think that there's a few more of these either white or light blue jackets that exist. And so I thought mine was like the only one. I don't know anybody in my year who got one. I wanted a jacket and they weren't doing it back then. And so, but hers, I think she told me she marched in like, I don't know, like late 50s, early 60s. So that was just kind of really neat to see that, my original jacket. And these were just some drum corps shirts with different guys pulling out their drum corps shirts, and us kind of goofing off here with our section leader, Todd, and just some random pictures. I think we're almost to the end, so I think I'm going to finish it. This is our rope line. Here's what's called retreat, when all the kids that are competing, here's the kid troopers. I call them kids. It just mean less than 22. The competing group, we were the only alumni group that was there for exhibition, but this is what retreat looks like. They all come out, all the different colors. It's really quite a pageant. And then there are times where they'll play like God Bless America. This is 1,000 kids on, because there's 12 groups that make it to the finals, and each one has over 100. So, you're like, to hear 1,500 horn players or whatever playing is pretty amazing. So this is what retreat looks like. And this was the trooper kids again. Amazing performance. They got 10th, which was huge. It's the first time since DCI was founded that they got that high. Back in the early years, they were #1 national champions. So here's me after the show. Here's the rope line at one of our outdoor performances. And this is a legend in drum corps. He happened to be at the airport, and I just got my picture taken with him. He is he's in the Hall of Fame of DCI and is very instrumental in drum corps. And this was just a new friend of mine that this was the morning after we had gotten back to this hotel at 2 a.m. and this was at like 6 a.m. going to the airport. So I came home and said hi to my mom, gave her a hug, and ate something, and then I took a nap. But anyway, here was us on our way to the airport, and this is one of my new best buddies. And here's my trooper wall that I had before, and then I'll have to give you a new trooper wall. So here's my original scarf, my original puffies from 82 flag, and some pictures. And now I've got some new stuff to add to the wall. And here's my ring. So Karen drums, Troopers Legacy Corps, Casper, Wyoming, 1957, honor, loyalty, dedication. And then it's engraved inside. Here's my medal and one of my most favorite pictures. So here's the rope line here. Here's the tenors, the basses, contemporary snares. This was just a really great picture. So I think we ended on time, or close to being on time, and we will do a part 2, and we'll get this recording for those that couldn't be here. So I think I'm going to say goodbye. And if you have questions, ask me next week and I'll send you some video links. Thanks for being here, Jasmine. Have a great weekend. Stay cool. Thanks, Sue. Bye, everybody.